Hey folks, Wrath coming at you with an Eternal Evolution video for the current Twilight Lands, September 9th, 2003. So I'm going to show you 4 different clips here. The first is going to be a clip of what I go through the various stages between the mini-bosses, and then each of the mini-bosses, and then finally the last boss. So what I decide to do is effectively go an energy team that's comprised of Nord, Rez, Jaina, Miranda, and Luke, and I pick on the Vanguard opponents. So the reason that I do this is because I've tested other comps on other stages, and it's really been slower than the following. So I decide to do this specific team effectively against all the Vanguard teams that I run up against. What you did notice there, hopefully, is that I actually didn't use the ults of a lot of the characters there at the end. And the reason that I didn't do that is because the energy accumulation from the previous stage carries over. And so what I want to happen is for Nord and Jaina and Rez to be full energy, or as close to as full energy, so that they can immediately ultimate. Doing that ensures that each stage runs relatively smoothly and that there are no deaths and restarts between them. So again, to iterate, notice that I'm saving energy from all of these guys up until the next stage. So the first mini-boss is a Insectoid Vanguard Bond, and so I decided to use the following team: Barog, Ares, Teresh, Wamagon, and Leo. I left them all on auto. All of the characters here are hyper evolved and X30. So left them on auto because I thought there was going to be no hiccups with the fight, and let it continue. It was pretty seamless. The idea was to have as many Insectoid gear pieces on as many characters as possible. I don't believe I had it on all of them, but I do know that I had it on Barog and Ares at a bare minimum, and then the others did not. As the fight does wind down, I do take some of the characters off of auto, and it was mainly because I wanted to either take Leo, Barog, or Wamagon to have some spare energy in case at the later stages either Nord died and I needed another tank. And so what you'll notice there is that I took them off. Stage 5 did not have the typical Vanguard that I was explaining earlier that I wanted to run into, so I just picked a tank team, picking 3 tanks with Miranda and Nord. I put the 3 tanks in auto because I want them just to go off, and then I control Miranda and Nord on purpose. The reason there is because I want to be able to shield Nord in case he gets massive amounts of burst damage from the minions, while also controlling Nord to trigger his immunity whenever I needed to. The other thing to note here is that all of these characters are X30, and over the time that I've played Eternal Evolutions, I've strived to complete the Twilight Lands as quickly as possible every time, and so each of these characters has an instrumental effect towards that goal. So this here is a path of divergence that I take versus a lot of the other folks. Lots of folks decide to use assassins here, and while I've had success with that in the past, it gets a little bit sketchy for me, especially with my Bailey not being hyper evolved, not having the best gear. And so if he dies, I can't really push for speed, and so I decide to go with a team that I know that does really well versus him, and it's this one. So 3 hunters that are comprised of Rebecca, Razeris, and Emma, Nord, and then Miranda. Nord is a little bit obtuse for most folks, but the reason is, if you've watched my previous video, when the shield goes up, I could target both of the ads here with his ultimate to help take it down quicker. I've also put this clip on 2 times speed just to save everybody some time, but ultimately it's cycling through these. Notice that when it gets near to the end, I do save Nord's ult as well afterwards, because we do still have a couple of stages to go through where I'm going to need him to clear before we either hit the mini bosses or we hit the final boss itself. Alright, and so this brings us to the final boss in stage 10. I know that lots of folks do want to one-shot this, and I realize that in lower levels that absolutely helps. However, you're going to notice that my entire goal here is to at least get 50% of the HP of the boss down, and then after that have a secondary team to burst a little bit further. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to go for first, and I don't really care if I need to reset once here if that helps me achieve the goal faster. And today you'll notice that I actually got second instead of first because I did hiccup on stage 4. I didn't select the right team. Of course I didn't show that for the video, but I lost about a minute and a half because I was already halfway through killing that boss, but it was just taking way too long, and then I realized that I had the wrong team set up. So what I've decided here on the final boss is a team entirely of summoners, no support heroes to either heal or shield, and I have Sorvali in that function as a pseudo healer. The rest of the team is in pretty standard gear, no one crazy. Even though this is an insectoid boss, I didn't have spare insectoid gear to put him on these guys and the team that I had in 4 that was Vanguards. Also note to self too that I should probably hyper evolve Sorvali and give her some better gear. She shouldn't have died here, but this is a testament to the following 3 characters outside of, Daniel and Sorvali dying. I could have been a bit more picky and, for example, put Jaina in here with bug gear, which she's already attached in, but I decided against that. And so I let this run through with the following team, and it gets down to, I believe, like 40% before I have to use my secondary team. So we'll give this just a couple seconds to get to that point. But overall, I think, a summoner team that's comprised of Sif, Ampu, and Dorali is really strong. Not just in this stage, but across other areas of the game as well. Ampu ends up as the last man standing here. He is the best summoner that I have on the team in terms of gear and evolutions, and so it makes sense for me that he survives this long. So, switching gears into this secondary team that I decided to use, and this was a team that was comprised of energy. In fact, it was similar to what I cleared the stages with, right? So we're using Nord, Rez, Jaina, Miranda, and Luke. I don't get a lot of damage out of these guys here, but probably 15 to 20% if memory recalls. So I was trying to juggle while recording this, also trying to get the optimal positions of the characters in place. But for a secondary team, I think doing an additional 15 to 20% damage is not bad at all. Again, especially if you're trying to push speed and going for first, getting that additional help is fantastic. Of course, I could have just reset right when my first team died. I was heavily debating doing that, but the only thing is I noticed because Sorvali and Daniel died early on, if for whatever reason that happened on reset with that team, I would have been shit out of luck because maybe the secondary teams that I had lined up wouldn't do as well and perform as well. And so I decided to take a gamble here and say, let's try a secondary team to see how much we can do. And then I was fully confident that the first team would be able to get this down, no problems. In fact, on auto as well. So I select the first team that we used, and I also encourage you guys too, that if you don't have these presets and formations set up prior to Twilight or prior to Summit, do so. It saves a ton of time. That took me like 5 or 6 seconds to select the right team and click go and have it start, versus previous Twilights. What I used to do is I would individually select each of the characters, and then that could take 20 to 30 to 40 seconds before you have the right team selected. So using the formations and presets that are available to you before you start the fights is actually really helpful in terms of cutting the time down. And then I will say I'm genuinely impressed with Sif since her release and how much damage she does. Both her and Ampu here really carried the team and resulted in a quick finish for me. I finished in about 16 minutes from start to the end. So shout out to Choopy for securing 1. I'll get you next time, buddy. See you then, folks.